Picture this, a country so small you could drive across it in 15 minutes, yet so wealthy it has zero national debt and more registered companies than citizens. Welcome to Liechtenstein, the alpine microstate that punches way above its weight class. I'm Julia, and today we're diving deep into one of Europe's best-kept secrets, a place where medieval castles meet modern prosperity, and where you might just bump into the prince at the local supermarket. Let me start with something that still blows my mind every time I think about it. Liechtenstein is the sixth smallest country in the world, squeezed between Switzerland and Austria with a total area of just 62 square miles. To put that in perspective, it's smaller than Washington, D.C. You could literally hike from one end of the country to the other in a single day. But don't let its size fool you, because what this tiny principality lacks in territory, it more than makes up for in character, wealth, and fascinating quirks that'll have you questioning everything you thought you knew about how countries work. Now here's where things get really interesting. Liechtenstein is one of only two doubly landlocked countries in the world. What does that mean? It means you have to cross through at least two other countries to reach an ocean. The only other place with this distinction is Uzbekistan. So if you're planning a beach day from Vaduz, the capital, you'd better pack some serious snacks for the road trip. This geographical peculiarity has shaped the country's entire identity, forcing it to become incredibly strategic about its relationships with neighboring nations and creating a culture of diplomatic finesse that's truly impressive. Speaking of diplomatic finesse, let's talk about Liechtenstein's relationship with Switzerland, because it's unlike anything else in international relations. Liechtenstein doesn't have its own army. In fact, it abolished its military force back in 1868, deciding that maintaining an armed force of just 80 men was more trouble than it was worth. Instead, Switzerland handles Liechtenstein's defense needs, but the relationship goes even deeper. Liechtenstein uses the Swiss franc as its currency, Switzerland manages its borders, and the Swiss postal system handles mail delivery. It's like having the world's most reliable roommate who takes care of all the utilities and security while you focus on making money. And boy, does Liechtenstein make money. This brings me to one of the most mind-blowing facts about this country. Liechtenstein has one of the highest GDP per capita rates in the entire world. We're talking over $180,000 per person. That's higher than Switzerland, higher than Norway, higher than just about anywhere else you can think of. The average citizen here is extraordinarily wealthy by global standards. Walking through Vaduz, you'll see Porsches and Mercedes lining the streets like they're regular family cars, because here, they kind of are. The prosperity isn't just for show either. The country has virtually no unemployment, no national debt, and maintains a budget surplus year after year. It's basically doing everything economists say is impossible to do all at once. But where does all this wealth come from? That's where Liechtenstein's story gets really clever. After World War II, the country transformed itself into a financial services powerhouse and a haven for international business. Today, there are more registered companies in Liechtenstein than there are citizens. Think about that for a second. The population is around 39,000 people, but there are over 75,000 registered companies. Many of these are holding companies and trusts, taking advantage of Liechtenstein's favorable tax laws and banking secrecy traditions. The country has worked hard to clean up its image in recent years, implementing stricter transparency measures, but the financial sector remains the backbone of the economy, accounting for roughly a quarter of the gross domestic product. Now, if you think Liechtenstein is just about banks and businesses, let me tell you about the royal family, because this is where fairy tales meet modern reality. Liechtenstein is one of the few remaining principalities in the world, ruled by the Prince of Liechtenstein. The current prince, Hans Adam II, is not just a figurehead. He wields actual political power, more than almost any other monarch in Europe. In fact, in 2003, Liechtenstein citizens voted to give their prince even more power, including the right to veto legislation and dismiss the government. It's a level of trust in monarchy that seems almost impossible in our modern democratic age. What makes this even more remarkable is that the royal family is mind-bogglingly wealthy. The Prince of Liechtenstein is one of the richest royals in the world, With an estimated fortune in the billions, the family owns the LGT Group, a massive private banking and wealth management firm, along with extensive real estate holdings and an art collection that would make major museums weep with envy. Yet despite this enormous wealth, the prince and his family live relatively modest public lives. You might actually see Prince Alois, who handles day-to-day governing duties, shopping at the local grocery store, or attending community events. Try getting that kind of access to royalty anywhere else. Here's something that'll give you a sense of just how intimate and unique this country is. You can actually rent the entire country of Liechtenstein for a night. Yes, you heard that right. For around $70,000, you can have exclusive access to the whole nation for an evening. The package includes accommodation for 150 guests, customized street signs with your name, a tour of the castle, wine from the prince's own cellar, and even the symbolic key to the country. It's the ultimate flex for corporate events or impossibly extravagant celebrations. Imagine sending out invitations that say you're hosting a party in your own private country. That's a level of exclusivity that money usually can't buy, but in Liechtenstein, apparently it can. Let's talk about language for a moment, because even this tiny country has fascinating linguistic quirks. The official language is German, but locals speak a specific Alemannic dialect that's quite different from standard German. If you've studied German in school, you might struggle to understand the locals when they're chatting among themselves. This dialect connects Liechtenstein closely to the German-speaking regions of Switzerland and Austria, creating a distinct cultural identity that's separate from Germany itself. In schools, children learn standard German for reading and writing, but the dialect remains the language of daily life, family, and friendship. It's a beautiful example of how language preserves culture and community identity. Now here's a historical oddity that I absolutely love. During World War II, Liechtenstein remained neutral, just like Switzerland. But here's the kicker: they sent 80 men to guard the border with Austria. By the end of the war, 81 men returned. They'd made a friend, an Austrian liaison officer who was attached to their unit. This story perfectly captures something essential about Liechtenstein's character. Even in the midst of global conflict, this little country managed to come out ahead, adding to its numbers rather than losing lives. It's become a point of national pride and a symbol of Liechtenstein's peaceful nature. For art lovers and history buffs, Liechtenstein offers treasures that seem impossible for such a small place. The princely collections, accumulated over centuries by the ruling family, include major works by Rubens, Van Dyck, and other old masters. Some of these works are displayed in the Liechtenstein Museum in Vienna, while others can be seen in Vaduz. The royal family has been collecting art for over 400 years, and the collection is considered one of the most important private art collections in the world. Walking through these galleries, you're seeing the same paintings that hung in royal palaces generations ago, a direct connection to European aristocratic culture. Let's get into something more practical and equally surprising. Liechtenstein has no airport, none, zero. If you want to fly into this country, you can't. The closest airport is Zurich, about an hour and a half away by car. There's also no railway station in the capital city of Vaduz. The railway line runs through the country, but the stations are in smaller towns. This means that getting to Liechtenstein requires a bit of old-fashioned road travel, which honestly adds to the charm. You wind through alpine valleys, past pristine villages, and suddenly you're in a different country. The journey becomes part of the experience, a slow transition that lets you appreciate the stunning landscape. Speaking of landscape, Liechtenstein is an outdoor paradise that rivals far larger countries. Despite its tiny size, about a quarter of the country is mountainous, with peaks reaching over 7,000 feet. The hiking here is absolutely spectacular. Well-marked trails take you through flower-filled meadows, dense forests, and up to mountain peaks offering views of Switzerland, Austria, and Liechtenstein itself. In winter, there's skiing at Malben, a small but excellent ski resort that locals have largely to themselves because tourists haven't quite discovered it yet. The great thing about outdoor activities here is that you'll rarely encounter crowds. You can have entire mountain trails practically to yourself on a weekday. Here's something about Liechtenstein that might surprise anyone interested in stamps and postal history. Liechtenstein is world famous among philatelists for its beautiful and valuable postage stamps. The country has been issuing stamps since 1912, and they've become highly collectible, known for their artistic quality and limited print runs. For a tiny nation, the postal service has been remarkably innovative, even issuing stamps that smell like chocolate or wine. Stamp sales have actually contributed significantly to the national revenue over the years. There's even a postal museum in Vaduz where you can see the entire collection and learn about this unexpected source of national pride. Now let's discuss something that makes Liechtenstein uniquely democratic despite being a monarchy. The country has a system of direct democracy where citizens can call for referendums on various issues, and they use it regularly. In fact, Liechtensteiners vote on issues several times a year. It's one of the most politically engaged populations in the world. The combination of princely power and direct citizen involvement creates a political system that shouldn't work in theory, but functions remarkably well in practice. Voter turnout is typically high, and people take their civic responsibilities seriously. In a country this small, your vote genuinely matters, and policies directly affect your daily life in visible ways. The wine production in Liechtenstein deserves special mention. The royal family owns vineyards that produce excellent wines, particularly Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. The growing conditions in the Rhine Valley are perfect for viticulture, and Liechtenstein wines have won international awards. However, production is so limited that most of the wine never leaves the country. If you want to try authentic Liechtenstein wine, you pretty much have to visit. Local restaurants serve it with pride, and wine tasting tours take you through the picturesque vineyards with mountain backdrops that belong on postcards. It's a reminder that even the smallest countries can produce world-class products when they focus on quality over quantity. Here's a fascinating tidbit about Liechtenstein's criminal justice system. The country has one of the lowest crime rates in the world, and the prison is tiny. We're talking about a facility that can hold just 20 inmates. Often, there are only a handful of prisoners at any given time, and sometimes the prison sits completely empty. Serious offenders are sometimes housed in Austrian prisons through agreements between the countries. The police force is also small, with just over 100 officers serving the entire nation. When you're in a country where everyone knows everyone, where wealth is distributed relatively evenly, and where social cohesion is strong, crime simply isn't much of an issue. Let me tell you about an absolutely charming tradition that happens every year on August 15th, Liechtenstein's National Day. The prince opens the gardens of Vaduz Castle to the public for the only time all year. There's a huge celebration with speeches, free beer and snacks provided by the government, fireworks over the castle, and a genuine sense of community that's hard to find in larger nations. The prince himself mingles with citizens, shaking hands and chatting like it's a neighborhood block party. This level of accessibility and the intimate nature of national celebrations really hammer home just how different life is in a microstate. You're not just a citizen, you're part of a community small enough that your presence actually matters. Education in Liechtenstein operates on the Swiss model, and it's exceptional. The country invests heavily in its schools, and students consistently perform well in international assessments. What's interesting is that students often go to Switzerland or Austria for university, as Liechtenstein itself has limited higher education facilities. However, there's the University of Liechtenstein, which focuses on architecture and economics and has an excellent international reputation in these specialized fields. The small class sizes and well-funded programs mean that students get an education that prepares them beautifully for the globalized world, even if they're coming from one of the world's smallest countries. Transportation within Liechtenstein reveals another charming quirk. The country has an excellent public bus system that connects all 11 municipalities. It runs frequently, it's clean, it's efficient, and it's incredibly affordable. You can buy a weekly pass for just a few Swiss francs. Many residents don't even bother owning cars because the buses work so well and distances are so short. Biking is also hugely popular, with well-maintained cycling paths connecting towns and villages. The commitment to sustainable transportation and public infrastructure shows a country thinking seriously about quality of life rather than just economic growth. Finally, let me share something about Liechtenstein's future that I find genuinely inspiring. This tiny nation is tackling climate change with serious ambition. Liechtenstein has committed to becoming climate neutral by 2050, and they're implementing aggressive policies to get there. They're investing in renewable energy, sustainable building practices, and green technology. For such a wealthy country dependent on financial services, they could easily rest on their laurels. But instead, they're proving that small countries can lead on global issues. The combination of wealth, small size, and political will means they can implement changes quickly and efficiently, serving as a testing ground for ideas that larger nations might adopt later. So there you have it, 20 incredible facts about Liechtenstein that reveal a country far more complex, wealthy, and interesting than its tiny size might suggest. This is a place where medieval traditions blend seamlessly with cutting-edge finance, where princes still rule but citizens vote constantly, where you can hike mountain trails in the morning and tour world-class art collections in the afternoon. Liechtenstein proves that success isn't about size, it's about smart choices, strong institutions, and a genuine sense of community. If you've never considered visiting Liechtenstein, I hope these facts have changed your mind. This little alpine gem offers experiences you simply can't find anywhere else on Earth. Thanks for joining me on this journey through one of the world's most fascinating microstates. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember that sometimes the smallest places have the biggest surprises.